Walking Big and Tall is the 13th episode of the 26th season of The Simpsons, directed by Chris Clements. Generally, I really liked this. There were times when I did feel like the episode was slightly fat-shaming rather than presenting a balanced opinion, but there's one speech that helped to... Well, it helped to reinforce the fact that it wasn't necessarily doing that, it was focusing on something else, and then it kind of fell apart again with another comment that was kind of fat shaming. But is it fat shaming or is it just promoting good health? That is, of course, the age old question when anybody points out obesity in other people. Is it fat shaming or encouraging good health? I don't have an answer for that, but if you do have any thoughts, particularly with how this episode presented that, please feel free to let me know. But it starts off really brilliantly with Bart and Lisa writing a song about Springfield and performing this song, and we have loads of the kids performing it. And I loved the song. I loved the message about the fact that Springfield may not be anything magnificent, but it'll do. And about loving all of the things that they do have rather than loving the things that they don't have. And I thought that was a really positive thing and a really nice song. Unfortunately, Homer gets stuck in the chair while watching the performance. And it's quite hard to watch because people laugh at him. And I imagine that there are people who have had similar situations. You know, somebody who's larger who's either got stuck in a chair or perhaps a chair has broken. These things do happen. We hear of these stories. And I can only imagine what it must feel like if people respond to that in a very unkind way. And I imagine that there are people who would respond to that in the way that they do in this episode. And Homer is ashamed. And that's quite interesting because usually Homer gets angry. He doesn't get ashamed. And there are occasions, of course, but usually if something goes wrong, Homer's response is to get annoyed. So for him to actually be ashamed is quite a different thing to deal with. And Marge suggests to Homer that he goes to an Overeaters Anonymous. However, on his way there, he encounters a group of larger characters, including Comic Book Guy, characters who are proud of being bigger and celebrate being bigger. And Homer is obviously very taken by this, and he likes the fact that there are people there who are not telling him to lose weight, but who are telling him to love himself for who he is, which is a brilliant message. But the episode, and this is where I think the episode sometimes did well with balance, sometimes didn't. Because part of the episode is saying, love who you are, because that's who you are, and that's a lovely message. But a lot of the episode is also saying, yes, but health is also important. And especially now in the media, a lot of people are fighting back against toxic body positivity. You know, people who say big is beautiful. Well, yes, it can be, but also it's not healthy. And there are a lot of campaigns against promoting obesity because it's not healthy, just as being underweight isn't healthy. It doesn't mean somebody's not beautiful, but it does mean that they're at risk, significant increased risk of various health complaints. And this episode, in general, does a good balance there. It's got a nice balance of saying, love who you are, because that's important. Don't let people make fun of you or fat shame you, because that's unacceptable. But at the same time, it is showing, but at the same time, you're also unhealthy. It's going to cut your life short. And that's not a good thing. But also on the flip side, it's saying life is about living and do what makes you happy. And if, having an unhealthy meal makes you happy, then go for it. So it's mixed messages, or is it balanced? I can't make up my mind. I think it's done in the way of balance to show that actually this is a very complex thing, and there are so many... Basically, no matter how you talk about either overeating or obesity or weight gain in general, somebody is going to take offense. If you say, oh, you should do it for your health, they're going to say, yes, but big is beautiful. If you say something horrible to them, that's just generally unacceptable anyway. And of course it works on the flip side with, underweight, but that's not what this episode is about. I'd be interested to see if they did tackle it with somebody being underweight. Well, Undereaters Anonymous. I wonder how the story would play out differently. Would they show the negative health effects of starvation and fasting and restricted dieting in quite the same way? part of me feels like they wouldn't, because I feel like that is treated as more of a serious mental health issue than somebody who perhaps binge eats, comfort eats, emotionally eats, when actually they're both as consuming, they're both as controlling, or they can be. But this episode feels like it can have fun with that. Whereas if it was somebody who was underweight because of restriction, I don't think the episode would feel like it could have as much fun with it. And that, of course, is where part of the problem lies, where I feel like they did have a bit of fun with some of the fat shaming. And there's a scene, on the one hand, it's brilliantly done, but at the same time, somebody had to come up with these terms. There's a scene in Moe's where Homer is saying to the others, I think Lenny and Carl and Barney, if I remember, these are all the terms you can no longer say to me. And he just lists off this giant list of fat-based names and terms, things like I think Michelin Man and Stay Puffed and stuff, Blob Saget. It's not funny, but I'd never heard that one before, and it's very cleverly written. But at the same time, somebody had to come up with that list of nasty, horrible, fat-shaming terms. And there are a couple of other times in the episode where it really leans into fat shaming. And if somebody takes offense at this, I could kind of understand. But at the same time, it is a balanced episode. It is saying it's okay to love who you are and you shouldn't let people call you names, but also think of your health. But also live each day as if it's your last. At the end of the day, it's about balance. It's about finding a balance. And I think the episode did a good job of finding the balance with the message by saying that life is about balance. A couple of times it maybe was a little bit having too much fun with what is actually a serious problem, not just in terms of healthcare, but in terms of the individual. And, most people who are overweight don't want to be overweight. And if they could, if it was easy to change habits, most people would do it. So it is a very sensitive topic, and I think it might have had a bit too much fun with it every now and then. But generally, I think it did a pretty good job at it, and it was very well written and very well done, and ultimately, I think it worked quite well. This is the last thing that I have to say about this. This is a spoiler for something that happens at the end of the episode, but this is the bit where I feel like it turned everything round on its head, where if there were any concerns about fat shaming, this bit actually made it clear that that's not what the episode was trying to do. So spoilers from now. At the end of the episode, when Homer is giving this eulogy for Albert, he goes on about saying that life is all about living and experiencing life and doing what makes you happy. And that's a bit where I felt like the episode was saying, we're not an episode about fat shaming, we're not an episode about glorifying obesity, we are an episode about telling people they should live their life to the fullest, and that both means doing what makes you happy, such as eating nice food, and taking care of your health, such as eating things in moderation. And I think the episode, in general, got that balance very well. So I enjoyed the episode. I think it was a very brave thing for them to do, and I think they handled it very well. It's not the first time they tackled this kind of problem. I think, in fact, there was a brief bit of animation that reflected back on, I can't remember the name of the episode, but it's the one where Homer learns that if he weighs over a certain amount, he can stay at home and work from home, and he wears that floral shirt or whatever. I feel like this one was a little bit more sensitively done, but both are good in their own ways. Either way, Walking Big and Tall is a very brave episode, and I think in general they did a good job with it.